My name is Reuel Fleury Griffiths. I am 27 years old and I am a strategic financial executive.
Would like to give us a quick update on the last few years, obviously your business plans and till now.
So, I don't really know where to start. I think that there has been a great deal of change that has happened. I think the last time we spoke, I was kind of a few years out of university trying to figure out what I was going to do. I had an app that I was working really hard on. And in that time, I think what had happened is my career actually took center stage. And as I was growing in my career, I had to focus a lot more on my work and the effort that I was putting into my app, and the effort that was going behind it kind of fell away. So actually this year, myself and my business partners finally decided to wrap up the app venture and move forward onto something else.
Okay, so can you explain what was the app real quick?
So I had an app called Patcher. It was a pay-as-you-go breakdown recovery, roadside assistance, and vehicle maintenance app. So it worked like Uber, so that when you broke down, instead of having to call up the AA or the RAC, you just logged into the app and it will connect you to the closest independent mobile mechanic within your location.
You see, you're pitching me this idea because it's still alive, it's still there. Am I wrong?
It's a good idea. I'm not gonna lie. It got a lot of attention from investors, and it was a really good project to work on. It's just that to build an app, and the hardest thing was working with independent providers, because obviously the app is a little bit like Uber, so all the drivers, all the mechanics, they're all independent. It was very, very, very difficult to work in partnership with them. Very difficult to ensure that they actually met the industry standards and requirements. Then to figure out, so I'm like a law person, so for me, my responsibility was really figuring out where any levels of liability would lay, and we just started to go down a bit of a black hole in terms of how we could actually run this business, where the liability was going to be, the levels of insurance needed, and it was just very difficult to get off the ground because of those things.
But then on the personal level, how challenging and how did it affect you?
I'm gonna be honest. It definitely had a very negative effect on me. I worked my arse off on this business. I used my holiday at work to go to events to pitch my business to investors. I was traveling constantly to meet different investors. I was on calls. Like, I remember waking up really early hours of the morning, like 7 a.m. No, that's not that early. I wake up at like 5, right? And then I'd have a call with the development team at like 6:37. And then I'd have to get ready, go to work. Oftentimes I'd have to commute into London. Then I'd be done with work, find a cafe sometimes, or sometimes I'd be in Reading working, so I'd have to come home and then have another call, testing. And then I would be doing things during my day at work as well. And I did that consistently for about 3.5 years, and it was hell. Okay, it was really a lot. And it's hard to start your own business. It's hard to start a startup. You really have to have the grit and the determination to keep it going. But also it's hard to walk away when you realize these things are actually affecting your mental health or your time. I had no time. Literally every day I was constantly, my weekends, when I wanted to spend time with my family, I was on a call with the developers or prepping for a pitch in the week, and it was just too much for me, and I had to let it go. Plus, it drained my bank account, because obviously you're starting a business, as well as maybe some funds from an investor, you are also funding these projects yourself. And for years I worked really good jobs, and and had no financial return from them because all my money was going into starting this project, and it just was too much for me to continue with that level of stress. I had a good team. I had 2 business partners. They were great to work with, but it was taking its toll on them. Also, I have switched out 3 different development companies. I've hired developers. I've had to give away shares in my business. Like, this was a hard thing to do, and I just couldn't allow my mental health to continue to suffer. My time, my relationships with my friends and my family, everything was suffering. I couldn't even have a relationship because I didn't have time for anything in my life apart from work and my business, and I just didn't want that to be what I continued to do. So,
is there anything that you've learned from all this in terms of?
I've learned so much.
Yeah, we're listening.
So one thing that I've definitely learned is it's really important to not cut corners. That was something that we often did because of costs. We would outsource some of our work to people who weren't actually at the right level so that we could have our test versions done to show to developers. But, oftentimes it didn't work. We ended up paying more in the long run for not using good people at the beginning, and that was a huge mistake. So definitely don't cut corners. Whatever you're going to start, if you're going to start something, like, don't cut any corners. Make sure that you see whatever it is that you're doing through all the way to the end, but don't try and do any corner cutting just because you think that it's going to get you somewhere quicker or it's cheaper or whatever. That was a huge lesson for me, and I think we actually spent more money cutting corners than we would have if we did it the right way the first time. Another thing that one of the biggest things that really this whole experience has taught me is, so oftentimes I felt very trapped, like claustrophobic, like I was stuck in between 4 walls, really, with nowhere to move, because my mind was so engulfed in this project, and then I had work, and then I had other responsibilities for myself, and it really, really, really did affect my mental health. But you know how it is, when people want you to, or they give you advice on business starting, they're like, you have to keep going even when it's hard, blah, blah, blah. And I just think that that's a fallacy, because it really nearly drove me mad. It was too much. I remember having a call with an investor that we spoke to, and I was explaining to him everything that we were going through with the business and how I was determined to keep going. And I remember him distinctly saying to me, Reuel, do not let this business affect your mental health, and if it does, it's okay to walk away, because that is more important. And at the time I was like, wow, why would he say something like that to me? Because he's supposed to be like an investor in the startup world. He's an entrepreneur and all of this stuff. Why would he be discouraging? Is it because I'm a woman starting a tech business, or is it because I'm black or whatever? But the reality was he was speaking the truth, and it evolved itself last year, and I realized that it's the truth. He told me about his own experience and how starting a few businesses in the past really affected his mental health, but now where his mind is clear, he's able to do something else, and he's actually doing really well with that. And so don't allow whatever you're doing to drive you that crazy. It's not worth your mental health. It's not worth, your relationships. It's not worth you actually being happy. So that's something else that I've definitely learned.
Would you say you wasted time, years? Obviously, you went to university, right?
Yeah.
What did you study?
I did law.
Come out, you did law. You tried this business, decided to wrap it up. Do you feel like you wasted time? Because now it's do you feel like you're back to square one? No,
this is my character. I'm just like this. So I was gonna, whether it was that business or something else, I was always gonna try something. And I'm always gonna continue to do that. I don't think I've wasted time. I think I've definitely learned a lot of lessons, and I try not to see things that I've gone through as a waste of time, because I just try and see what I can learn from something. There's this book I've read called Outwitting the Devil, And it's a really, really good book, and it talks about in all situations trying to see the seed of opportunity. So for me, like, I've made so many connections in doing this business, like more than most people would probably make in their lifetime. And it's been amazing. I've been to so many different events. I have been able to talk to so many different people. I was invited to talk at a young females entrepreneurs club in London. That was amazing. I've never did anything like that before. I was able to talk at Startup Grind, which was a huge startup network, and I was part of these projects. So there's been some great gems that have come out of this experience, and at the moment I'm just trying to look at the seed of opportunity. Like, I'm happy with it. I did the very best I could. You know, I busted my ass on this thing, and it didn't work out. And to be honest, when we walked away from it, at first it took me weeks and weeks and weeks to be like, okay, I'm gonna let this go. But the moment that I did, I actually felt so light. Like, I felt like this massive dark cloud had just been lifted, and I could see, like, clearly, and I could do something else. Whereas before, I felt like I was like handcuffed to this business and it had to work, or I was going to go down with it. But the moment I walked away and said, look, I did my best and I've accepted how far I've come, like, it was a huge cloud. And, you know, like, I will always keep trying things. I just think that that's just part of, you know, success. You just don't know which thing's going to pop off for you. You just let them come and go. A lot of people have become successful very later on in their life. Some, it's been their first project. For others, it's been after 15, 20 attempts. It doesn't really matter. It's just about continuing to try if that's what you want to do. And for me, once the cloud was lifted, I could breathe, basically.
What kind of projects are you working now since you're free?
So at the moment, I am launching, well, I have kind of semi-launched my own online lingerie business. So about this, I think that sometimes we try and do hard businesses first because we think that that's what we need to do. I went to start an app with no technology experience, no understanding about how to build apps, nothing. I learned everything myself. Whereas, like, I was talking to God about this, to be honest, and I felt like God told me to do something that's just simple. And everybody was doing Shopify and all this stuff, and I was like, okay, well, the high street's dying. What could I potentially do? What could I do that once it's done, I could make money tomorrow? That was my mindset. And so my brother we were talking about Shopify stores because he has one. And I was just talking to him about maybe starting a lingerie business because obviously if Topshop has been sold, the Arcadia group, I can't see Ann Summers and Victoria's Secret and all of these other brands surviving this period. So I just figured that I could probably start my own lingerie business online, pretty easy to do. And it just really taught me that you don't have to do like something so majorly complicated to be successful. You can just like start a little online boutique, just sell a product. And I used to always kind of like feel like if I was going to be an entrepreneur, it was going to be a real world changing business, right? But the reality is like it doesn't need to be. And I think as I've got older, my mindset has changed a lot about the kind of life I want to live. And because that has changed, I've actually been really comfortable with just doing a simple business. Something that I can get my head around, you know, something with no team, something that I can do myself, something that I don't have to rely on other people to do. Like with the app, I had to rely on developers, and there was usually about 15 of them. But yeah, so, you know, right now this lingerie business, it's going okay. I made my first sale, so I'm feeling very proud about that. And also, I've got a few creative ideas in terms of the types of products that I'm going to be, on the type of look that I want for my brand. But we'll see how that goes over the course of this year. And I know that there's some very successful Shopify businesses out there, and I plan to be one of them.
So obviously going 100 miles an hour with your previous business and obviously starting this new business now, you're applying what you've learned to this new thing now, and it's giving you, in terms of like your mental health, on your personal life? How is that affecting you now?
So, first of all, I have removed the pressure off of myself. So, I have ADHD. I don't know if you guys know what that is. And so that's sometimes very difficult to handle, because people who suffer from ADHD oftentimes overthink everything and put a lot of pressure on themselves. When you have an entire app that you're trying to disrupt the world with, you know, it's pressure. It's like everything outside was very intense, and then everything in my mind was worse, and it was just too much. But now, obviously, I have actually started something simple, and I really feel like I've got like the grips of it. I know that right now my website and stuff, I'm still working on it, still testing different brand ideas, but in the back end, I actually can do this stuff. With my app, it was like very difficult to do anything because I had to always learn it first, because I'm not a developer. I'm not, you know, a mechanic. I don't have a strong understanding of vehicles, but I was starting a business in this industry. Not that it's impossible to do, but at least with this, like, I understand, you know, the market, I understand the industry. I am a potential customer of my own brand, so it's a lot easier for me to get my head around, and all of that anxiety and overthinking and pressure that comes, especially if you have ADHD, like, it's there, but it's not out of my control anymore, because I just feel a lot more confident about what I'm doing, because I just know I have more knowledge on this to start with, whereas before I was learning and kickstarting this massive disrupting business at the same time, and I just didn't have the capability to do that at the time. So
obviously 2020 Corona came through. How did that affect you in terms of work, finance and all?
So COVID, 2020 was very interesting for me. That's the first thing that I'd like to say. When COVID happened and we all started working from home, I literally thought I was gonna sail through 2020 and be fine. But boy, was I wrong. So I work in I'm a contractor, and I was working on a contract for a really great company at the time, and it was a maternity contract for 12 months, and we were in March when COVID hit, so everyone was working from home. It was going really well. I knew that I was going to be there till October, most definitely. And I knew that I was delivering really good work for the clients. Most of the work that I was doing was very successful. I was getting excellent feedback from partners and directors. So I was like, I'm set. And I was looking at all these people losing their jobs like, man, this is going to be hard for you. I am so sorry about that. But deep down, I was like, yeah, I'm set. This is going to be fine. So a lot happened over the course of 2020 for me in terms of relationships, friendships and stuff. And I was like, well, if I'm not going to be hit from the side of the jobs, then I've definitely been hit from relationships and friendships that I've had. That has definitely taken a toll. So fast forward now to October, we're coming up to the end of this contract, and the lady that I've been covering for a year, she comes back to work. So now we're both working on the same job, and it's kind of awkward because she's going to be working 4 days a week or 3 days a week, and I'm there 5 days a week all the time. I've also worked with the team. She hasn't worked with the team because she used to work in London. So I think she thought I was coming for her job. I was not coming for her job, but I think there was that in the atmosphere, and it made it very difficult for us to work together. So we get to October, and then I get a call from the director, and he says to me that they're going to extend me till Christmas. So I was like, oh, God is good. See, I am here. Obviously, God wants me to stay here. I'm not sure about her. Maybe it's not going to work out for her. So I was like, okay. So I'm on this contract now to the end of the year, and they tell me about another opportunity opening up within the business. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to go for it. They literally talked to me as if I had this job in the bag, because everything that they wanted, I was already doing. So I do the interview for the job, and to my surprise, guess who one of the interviewers is? Same woman who thinks I'm coming for her job. So we have the interview, it's going really well. They're asking me lots of great questions. I'm able to demonstrate the work I've done and everything like that. And then I speak to one of the managers after the interview, and she's like, yeah, I think this is going to be good for you. I think you're going to get it. I think this is and I was like, okay, cool. I'm set for January 2021. Only to find out a couple of days later that they said that I didn't act like I wanted the job. I was like, how can someone not act like they want the job? I prepared for this interview. I spoke to the directors before to ask them exactly what I needed to prepare for. Like, I really did my absolute best. God knows I did my best. I tried so hard. So for you to turn around and say I didn't act like I didn't want the job, at first I felt like this was a huge blow. I felt so low because I was just like, well, what am I going to do? I don't have a job now. I'm like those same people that I was looking at in the summer, like, I'm sorry. And it was at that point that I just said, at that point I was speaking to my brother, and that's where the whole idea of me starting my own Shopify store came up. So at the end of the day, and it's crazy because I actually started 2020 saying, by the end of the year, God, I'm going to be working for myself. And somehow it actually happened without me even wanting it to happen. So I kind of feel like God has his ways of doing things. He will push you he'll make sure that your back is sometimes up against the wall so that you figure out how to swim. Now I've got this brand that I'm starting to work on, and I'm looking for other contracts as well. I know that if I get one, my brand is already running. It's not like I have to start it while I'm starting a job. All of those things are in place for me to be able to run this business while I find new work. So God has a way of doing things. If I had got the job, or if I had stayed at the company I was working for, or found something straight away, maybe I wouldn't have started my own lingerie brand. Probably not, to be honest with you, because I was pretty done with businesses and startups at that point after I had let go of my precious app business that I worked so hard on for so long. I probably wouldn't have started my own Shopify brand. So God has a way of working things out, and COVID definitely was an interesting year for me. I was able to learn so much about myself. I think that when times are good, it's very easy to feel like you got it and you're cool and you know how to deal with things. But when you're dealing with things like COVID and then the economy and all of that stuff, and you're actually worried as well for your loved ones. Like, I was praying every day for my parents that they would be safe, because of what we were seeing all around us. You really start to think about your life and what you're doing and what is important to you and where your values are and all of those things. Those things just become really important when you have no money or you haven't got a job. So your rent's covered for the next month, but what about the month after that? You have to get creative. You have to find a way out. There's no more running back and forth to mum and dad because you know that your next paycheck's coming the next month, so it's okay. You really have to make different decisions, and it's been a big year of lessons for me. I never thought that the way 2020 ended for me was ever going to happen to me. And I also thought I was really good with bouncing back from failures and stuff, but I actually learned that some things have to be built from the ground up. They can't be done off the back of a vibe or off the back of how a YouTube motivational video or whatever. You have to build that stuff really inside of you. And I feel like I had it. It's just, it never was nurtured because life was going well, this whole time. And it's like now I've had to really push myself to dig deep, really dig deep and pull that out of me. But one positive thing about 2020, I lost a lot of weight. I was gymming really hard and I lost so much weight, so I'm really proud of myself.
So what role did God play in your life throughout this whole experience?
So I have actually come out of a season where I refused to talk to God because I couldn't believe that he would have allowed me to experience so much pain and heartbreak and frustration, all of the things. And I've always had those intentions to have God at the center of my life, growing up in the church and all of that. And I was really angry with God for so long, for months, since probably October last year, I just refused to talk to God because I just felt like, why would he do something like this to me? And I literally was going a bit downhill, especially with my mindset, right? But God has been reminding me that whether you make your bed in hell or above the stars, he is standing right there with you. And sometimes you have to remember that you might feel like you have been buried, but actually you're a seed that's been planted. Because if you think about it, a planted seed and something that's been buried, both the surroundings look the same. It's in the soil, it may be 6 feet down, but I'm not a coin that has, no value. I'm a seed which has to grow. And God has been showing me, or God has put me into a position where I have realized that he's really planted me. And I think, especially for people who've grown up in the church their whole life, it's very frustrating sometimes because our experience with God and then what we learn and what we've grown up learning in those traditions just does not match. And you're standing trying to juggle the two constantly. People who've grown up in the church have a very unique living experience because it can be very pressurizing to just be a person in society with this whole weight of the church and tradition and what you think you know and all of this stuff on your back. Let that go. God would prefer you to be you and work with you than you to carry all those things. And for me, I've been going through this season of unlearning. Like, God taught me this thing. He said, when you make a poor choice or a wrong decision, God was like to me, this is what you should do. He said, first of all, take the L because you made the decision, right? But also recognize that about 90% of the choices you make are influenced by all of that stuff, all of the tradition, all of the ways of thinking that you've been taught. So maybe you have to accept that maybe you just were taught something in an incorrect way as well. But then it's your responsibility to just unlearn what you learn and learn something new to make it better. And that is as simple as it is. And there's me thinking my whole life, oh, you have to go through this grit. You have to be on your knees and fasting and praying like God, God, God. And it's like stressful and you don't even want to do it. But the reality is, it's like God didn't even ask you to do that. Literally, like, let go of all of that stuff. And I know that might be uncomfortable for traditional Christians, especially Adventists. But you actually have to let go of that stuff, or else you won't be able to breathe. We can sometimes be so suffocated in this stuff. And the reality is you have to really develop your own relationship with God. And the best way to do that is to literally let go of all of that stuff. And start building on the principles that you know for yourself. Let God work with you. Remember, he made you with all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses. Yeah. And remember, the Bible says, where sin abounds, grace abounds much more. So it's like people think that, oh, if you're a sinful person or you make poor choices, you have to ask God for his grace and all that stuff, which you do. But if you're doing the right thing, God is always gonna. But it says, where sin abounds, grace abounds much more. So actually, the closest place to God is when you're struggling with sin, when you're struggling with difficulties, when you're struggling with making right decisions. You're actually closer to God than if you was just living normally and perfectly. So don't make that rock your boat, That's the place where grace is much more. And I just want to remind people of that. Don't let the heavy weights of what you think that we have to do, and we're living in the last days now and we shouldn't take a vaccine and let's get ready, all of that stuff. Don't let that come into the picture. It's got nothing to do with you and your relationship with God. God can still do so much in your life, but you have to step away from that. That's not of God. What is of God is the person that he made you to be, and you allowing him to work within your life. That's what trusting God means. That's what it means. It means trusting God means making a decision based on the truth and the knowing of who God is, and you can trust that. So that is the impact that God had on my life over the last year.